The earliest non-Christian confirmation of Jesus comes from the Roman historian Tacitus, writing around 115 CE in his Annals. Tacitus describes Emperor Nero's persecution of Christians, whom he calls Christians. He explicitly states that the founder of this sect, Christus, suffered the extreme penalty under the procurator Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. This passage, Annals 15.44, is universally accepted as authentic and establishes the historical reality of Jesus' execution by Roman authority in Judea. Tacitus was not sympathetic to Christians, lending significant weight to his factual confirmation of the movement's origin and the death of its founder. His account confirms the core political and chronological framework provided by later Christian sources, placing Jesus firmly within the historical record of the early Roman Empire. Beyond Tacitus, other Roman officials provide corroborating evidence. Suetonius, writing around 120 CE in his Lives of the Caesars, mentions disturbances among the Jews in Rome caused by Chrestus during the reign of Claudius, leading to the expulsion of Jews from the city around 49 CE. While possibly confusing Jesus with a follower, this reference confirms that Jesus was a known figure whose followers were active in the capital within 2 decades of his death. Furthermore, Pliny the Younger, governor of Bithynia, wrote to Emperor Trajan around 112 CE seeking advice on how to handle Christians. Pliny's letters detail Christian worship practices, noting they met on a fixed day to sing hymns to Christ as to a god, confirming the rapid spread and devotion to a historical figure they revered. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, writing in the 90 CE, provides 2 critical references in his work, Antiquities of the Jews. The first, undisputed passage, mentions James, the brother of Jesus who was called Christ. This reference confirms the existence of Jesus, his family, and his messianic title within the Jewish historical context. The second, longer passage, known as the Testimonium Flavianum, describes Jesus as a wise man, a teacher, and one who was crucified by Pilate. While the Testimonium Flavianum contains later Christian interpolations, such as calling Jesus the Christ, scholarly consensus holds that an authentic core reference to Jesus existed in Josephus's original text. This core confirms Jesus was a historical figure known for attracting followers and being executed by the Romans. The letters of Paul, written between 50 and 60 CE, are the earliest surviving Christian documents, predating the Gospels by decades. Paul, who never met Jesus during his earthly ministry, confirms the historical reality of Jesus through his interactions with those who did. In Galatians, Paul states he met James, the brother of the Lord, and Peter, confirming the existence of Jesus' immediate family and key disciples shortly after the crucifixion. Paul refers to Jesus as being born of a woman, born under the law, confirming his human existence and Jewish identity. These letters provide a snapshot of the early church's belief system, which was fundamentally rooted in the life, death, and resurrection of a specific, recently deceased historical person. While the Gospels are theological narratives, they function as biographical accounts rooted in specific historical settings. They place Jesus within the precise political landscape of first-century Judea, mentioning figures like Herod the Great, Pontius Pilate, and the high priest Caiaphas, all confirmed by external sources. The Gospel of Mark, generally dated around 65 to 70 CE, is considered the earliest narrative source, drawing on oral traditions and possibly earlier written collections. The existence of the hypothetical Q source, shared by Matthew and Luke, suggests multiple independent streams of tradition regarding Jesus' sayings and ministry, strengthening the historical foundation of the accounts rather than relying on a single source.
Archaeology confirms the geographical and cultural context described in the Gospels. Excavations have verified the existence and nature of locations central to the narrative, such as the small rural village of Nazareth and the fishing town of Capernaum. Discoveries like the Pool of Siloam in Jerusalem, where Jesus is said to have healed a blind man, align precisely with the gospel descriptions of the city's infrastructure. Furthermore, the ossuary of Caiaphas, the high priest involved in Jesus' trial, was discovered in 1990, confirming the existence of a key historical antagonist. These findings do not prove Jesus' divinity, but they solidify the historical accuracy of the world in which he lived and ministered. Historical scholars employ the Criterion of Embarrassment to identify likely authentic historical events. This criterion posits that details embarrassing or problematic for the early church are unlikely to have been invented. Key examples include Jesus' baptism by John the Baptist, which implies John's superior authority, a detail the early church would have preferred to omit. Another example is the denial of Jesus by Peter, the foundational apostle, and the flight of the disciples during the arrest. Most significantly, the shameful death by Roman crucifixion, reserved for criminals and rebels, was a major stumbling block for early Christian evangelism, making it highly probable that this fact is historical. The Criterion of Dissimilarity focuses on sayings or actions of Jesus that are neither derived from contemporary Judaism nor easily explained by the later theology of the early Church. This criterion helps isolate unique elements attributable only to the historical Jesus. Examples include Jesus' radical use of the term Abba for God, an intimate Aramaic term not typically used in Jewish prayer, and his absolute prohibition of divorce. These teachings stand apart from both the Pharisaic Judaism of his time and the Hellenistic Christianity that developed later, suggesting they originated with Jesus himself. This method helps historians distinguish between the historical figure and subsequent theological interpretations. The overwhelming consensus among professional historians, regardless of their personal religious beliefs, is that Jesus of Nazareth was a real historical figure. The historical evidence is considered sufficient to establish that Jesus was a Jewish teacher from Galilee who gathered followers, preached about the kingdom of God, and was executed by the Roman prefect Pontius Pilate around 30 CE. The debate among scholars centers on the interpretation of his mission and the nature of the resurrection accounts, not on his existence. The convergence of multiple independent sources, Roman, Jewish, and early Christian, provides a robust foundation for this historical conclusion. The historical case for Jesus rests on a triangulation of evidence: external confirmation from hostile or neutral Roman and Jewish sources, the earliest internal testimony from the Pauline letters written within 2 decades of his death, and the application of rigorous historical methods to the gospel narratives. These methods confirm details that were inconvenient or unique, strengthening the historical core. The existence of Jesus is not a matter of theological faith, but a conclusion drawn from standard historical inquiry, establishing him as one of the most well-attested figures from the 1st century Roman province of Judea.